Next curve.
Hey everyone, this is Leonard Lee, Executive Analyst here at Next Curve, and thanks for joining this Rethink Webcast. And I'll be doing a event recap with my friend and fellow industry analyst, Prakash Sangam of Tantra Analyst. So welcome, Prakash. How you doing?
Hey, Leonard, doing pretty well. How about yourself?
That's a very wintry background you have there.
Yeah, it's representative of how people are feeling on the West Coast. So, on the East Coast. I mean,
you're trying to empathize with them,
exactly.
I guess, virtually in the metaverse. Okay, I get it. Yeah. So we were both at the Samsung Galaxy Unpacked 2023 event, and so folks, what we're going to do is we're going to take a few minutes here to share our key takes from the event. And Prakash, before we get started, do you want to add anything to your introduction other than you're like this really well-respected, great analyst in the analyst community, in the tech sector, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, thanks for the kind words. I want to just give a plug for my website, tantraanalyst.com, where most of my stuff is there. I do a podcast as well called as Tantra's Mantra. And I do a blog and so on. So go to tantraanalyst.com.
Yeah, and just so our audience knows, he does some great stuff on 5G as well as the IP side of the equation, and he's a member of 3GPP, right? And
yes.
So he writes a lot of great stuff about these topics, very important ones, right? SEPs or standard essential patents, et cetera, et cetera. So definitely check out what Prakash is doing with Tantra Analyst. And so let's get started here. Now, what I wanted to start off with is how we started off, right? Which is we actually went to San Francisco the day before the actual event, right? The Unpacked event. And it was a special, I guess, pre-event event that Samsung put together to showcase their whole strategy around sustainability, right? Mm-hmm. And so, and just really quickly, there was a number of Samsung executives that were present. So there was Won Jun Choi, who's the EVP of and head of research and development at Samsung Mobile Experience. And I really like how, you know what they do at Mobile Experience at Samsung, they capitalize the X in experience, kind of like how Next Curve capitalizes the X in Next. So I don't know who came up with that first. I think it might have been me. Oh, well, I'll consider it flattery. And then you and I, we had a chance to meet with In-hee Chung, who's the VP of Corporate Sustainability Center at Samsung Electronics, and then our good buddy, Mark Newton, right? Mm-hmm. Had a good time chatting with him. He's the head of corporate sustainability at Samsung Electronics America. And I thought it was really an interesting presentation that they provided. What were some of your key thoughts coming out of that evening that we spent with Samsung on sustainability?
Yeah, sure. So anytime these soft subjects like sustainability, climate impact comes in, I'm a little bit cynic and consider that they're more marketing than business impacting. But sitting through the panels and talking to Mark and In-hee, I came out with less cynic view of it, saying that this is business critical and many of the things that they talked about are part of their business processes, and there is some financial side to it, and not just marketing side to it as well. So, and some of the things that we talked with Mark were really interesting, going, kind of getting behind the screen story on what goes in deciding, what goes into a packaging material versus not, and so on, right? So it was really interesting. I found it really useful.
Yeah, definitely. And it was funny that you and I were the only two analysts. Actually, you and I, out of maybe about 200 people, were the only two to ask the panel a question.
Yeah,
And
you
wrote
don't
our
want to.
9 names
Yeah,
down,
you
right?
want to get just what they're saying, right?
Yeah,
Inquire a little bit and try to find out the substance, not just take things on the face
right,
value.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah, and just so that folks who are in the audience for this podcast or webcast know, that's what Prakash is known for. And when we get on analyst calls, he usually asks the really good questions. So yeah, the thing I thought was really interesting
yeah.
um, was like I said, like you said, the I think the challenges that all companies are going to have taking goals and making impact. That
Mhm.
is really not an easy thing to do. And I think that was a key takeaway that I got from our conversation with Mark Newton, who's a fantastic individual. He's a chemistry PhD. I mean, this
Yeah,
guy's a real deal. And so we covered a lot of different topics, right? They were talking about, the ocean bound plastics and how they're, trying to take an approach with sourcing where they're using reclaimed or plastics from the ocean, and they also talked about one of the things that I thought was really important is looking at the device and actually extending the support from the typical 2 years to 4 years, and that was that question that you asked, right?
yeah,
Regarding
yeah.
to
So
yeah,
correct. So I mean, you can, the resources put in packaging and other things are one time, and you can do a lot of improvement on it and reduce the climate impact. I think the biggest impact any smartphone company can do on achieving these climate goals is to increase the life of the device, right?
right,
Usually this device light starts slowing down after a couple of years, and people might think that okay, it's basically smartphone companies pushing them to buy a new one and abandon a good working smartphone and throw it away into the trash and so on. And remember I asked that question as well, how you balance between business objective of increased growth by selling
right,
more phones versus making your phones live longer, which it's counterintuitive, right? That
yeah,
basically cuts into your growth story. So
yeah,
I think their answer is maybe we have to look a little bit more closely on specific things they're doing. They are doing a lot of things to increase the longevity, and then there's this program of recycling phones, taking it from say some advanced markets and sending them to lower and then lower tier value tier markets and
right.
reselling them and so on. So yeah, that's I think is much more impacting than many other things that we talk about.
Yeah, and we also have to recognize that the longevity topic is also having longevity is also a competitive thing, right? Because
Mhm.
Apple supports
Yeah,
their devices for up to 6 years, if not more. I mean, when you look at security updates, right? And so
yeah,
this is where I think the Android ecosystem or universe and the OEMs have lagged. And I think, this sustainability story and the objectives and the value, societal value that it presents, is benefiting from this competitive dynamic, right? And so,
correct.
I think we have to think about it in terms of that as well, because you're absolutely right. Um, you would think that extending the longevity of the devices would eat into the growth story, but there's the whole competitive element to it, right?
Mhm.
There is a bar being set, and it's great to see Samsung actually raising the bar in the Android ecosystem, because there are a lot of challenges, right? And the OEMs in the space, they have a lot of challenges in actually enabling that longevity in the devices and providing that support through their ecosystem. So yeah,
Correct. Yeah, very true. And I think one of the other important things to consider is, and this is one of the important consideration for people when they're buying new phones, the resale value of the phones. I think Apple has done a great job there. So I mean, most of the Android ecosystem still needs to do a lot of work, in my view. That the resale value of Apple's is pretty high, stays
Yeah.
pretty high. Yeah, when they want to upgrade their phone, for example, right, compared to Android phones.
Right. And but even with packaging, one of the other things that I thought was uh something that Mark really brought to a sense of reality
Mhm.
about was how challenging it is to actually make the cyclical this the recycling cycle, if you will, actually happen, right?
Yeah,
You have to have the infrastructure in place. And so, I asked that question about what about compostable or what do you call it? Compostable
compostable.
materials for
Mhm.
packaging. And the
Mhm.
answer was, well, yeah, we can do that, but you have to have a specific environment for that
Correct,
biodegradable, benefit to actually be there, or
correct.
so it's not, it boils down to this. It's a lot easier to say than do. And then,
Indeed, indeed.
you have to admire guys like Mark who are into science of trying to figure out how do we bridge these commitments that corporations are making. Oftentimes they're pretty fluffy to
Correct. Yeah,
impact, right? There's a
yeah.
huge gap, and a lot of thinking execution that has to happen in order to bridge that gap.
Correct. Yeah, indeed, indeed.
Yeah. So, hey, what were your thoughts on the overall event the next day? So, on February 1st, that's when we actually, in the morning, that's when we attended the actual event that started, I think, at around 10 a.m., right, in the morning.
Correct. Yeah, yeah.
What was that one theme that kind of popped in your mind? Because, going in, we saw the three lenses and the moon.
Yeah, I don't know what that is about. I didn't really see much of that addressed in the
Yeah.
presentation itself. But I think overall, the key things, I mean, on at least two were unexpected. The first one was camera, right? I mean, if you didn't go to S23 Unpacked event knowing that there'll be tons of camera improvement, then maybe, you didn't really think through it. So, and Samsung really delivered on it. They're not almost probably like what 30-40% of the presentation event was
Right.
all about camera. So it's all about camera with 23. And
Yep.
then second was on obviously sustainability, that we talked a little bit about how
Yeah.
that sustainability goals and the stuff fits into S23. And third, they touched a little bit upon, but I hope they had talked more about, is this Samsung ecosystem and interoperability between,
Yeah.
how if you have a Samsung laptop or a Samsung phone and other things, how they work very closely together. And they
Yeah.
had nice demos as well.
Yeah.
But I think I hope they talked a little bit more about it, because there is a lot of value in what they are
Right.
trying to do there, right? So those are
Right.
two things. So,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. I think there's always this big focus on the specs, the processor, the camera, um,
mhm.
all these really cool applications and use cases. But, you know, uh, you, the, this seamless experience across the devices, right? That's
Mhm.
always a challenge, right? Because there's a lot of fragmentation in the user experience if you're outside of the Apple world, right?
Mhm.
That's that benefit of the quote unquote walled garden, although I would argue it's not necessarily a walled garden. People just named it that. But the features like multi-connect, the quick share, some of the integrations that they have with, I think Samsung is doing some close collaboration with Microsoft on Link to Windows. All these things coming together in a common command center to control and orchestrate that seamless bridging. I think those. I agree with you. I don't think that they emphasized it enough, and I don't think people really talk about it as much as they should. And that really is the most important thing, right?
Yeah,
To
I
have your
think it's
devices
very
work
key. I mean,
together really well. And
correct, correct. I mean, in terms of spec, I mean, if you look at any new phone announcements these days, beat anybody, right? Samsung,
yeah,
Apple. Anyway, what you get is slightly better for slightly
right,
better processor, slightly better camera,
right,
slightly better speeds, and so on, right? I mean, that's all on expected lines. But this, when you have so much of equipment, different types of equipment, be it IoT, be it
yeah,
compute in your home, and all of them are disparate, right? It's
yeah,
so hard to make sure all of them connect together, recognize
yeah,
together, work as one group. So I think there is a lot of value in it, and who else can do better than Samsung, right? I mean, they
yeah,
kind of have almost every damn consumer electronic item in the home. They have fridges, TVs, media players, laptops, phones, tablets, IoT device, and everything. So
yeah.
I know. I think they have much better opportunity than anybody to
Oh yeah,
use that seamless experience to their users, and also it is business impacting, right? It
yeah,
increases stickiness. It's all of them are working together. When I want to go buy a new TV, then I would buy another Samsung one because I don't have to do the setup all over
yeah,
again and so on, right? So
mhm,
it increases stickiness. So you
yeah,
mentioned about link to Windows. I mean, I heavily use that device, connecting my Ford
yeah,
with my Google Book.
yeah,
With the multi-control, I think it'll be even better. I
yeah.
found link to Windows works, but it is pretty slow. Setting up is cumbersome, and how you
Right.
configure it. There are not many options on configuration and so on. But
Yeah.
I know I would really love using multi-control when I get my devices and so on, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I think, like you said, Samsung is one of the rare companies in the world, the OEMs that plays in the personal computing market. And
Mm,
when I say that, I include also mobile. Let's just call it personal computing, stuff that we
correct.
use personally, whether it's for work, play, or what have you. One of
Yeah.
the very few companies in the world that could actually kind of do this over the top integration and offering a seamless experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
So basically abstracting all of the complexity and fragmentation away underneath, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
then being able to present something where, I mean, literally you just don't know that you're dealing with any of these issues underneath, right? Because they've
Correct.
they've
Yeah.
sewed them all together into something that's easy to use and a compelling, consistent experience. Now, here's I want to make a comment here because I've been reading some reviews. I just think it's so funny that there's folks that somehow think that smartphone manufacturers need to come up with a new design every year. I don't understand that. So if we were, I want to make the statement because if we take this back to sustainability,
Yeah.
even before we do that, let's talk about the merits of iconic design. And I want to bring up the example of a Porsche. If
Yeah.
you look at the Porsche, it hasn't evolved that much over time. The basic shape is about the same, right?
Yeah. Year over year. Yes. Yeah.
It's an iconic design. It functionally it works. Structurally, aesthetically it's appealing, and they've evolved it, but they haven't made these dramatic changes year over year, right? I mean, it's a
Yeah.
very durable and compelling design. And I think as we look at these smartphones and setting expectation that every year, along with all these improvements in specs and what have you in performance, that you need to actually have a different looking device, a new design. Let's consider now how important really is that. And then number two, let's think of it in terms of the impact on sustainability. Because one of the things that you can get with iconic design that doesn't change every year is you can use the same accessories, whether it's the cover or whatever, uh,
Yeah.
for a much longer period of time. And think about all the waste that's associated with this. So I just don't understand what this fixation in the industry media, there is about having to have a new design every year. If your design stinks, I think what OEMs should do is go and try to hire a great designer and come up with a durable, just like what we're saying with the support, right, for the operating system and everything else. Have a design that also has longevity. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there are, if even if on the smartphone side, when once we moved away from physical keyboard to a
Yeah.
touch keyboard, I don't. The lot of design elements have changed. Maybe instead of rounded corners, you have square. Sometimes some years you go to rounded corners, and then next year go to a squared corners, and so on. Right. I think the only major change in terms of design I have seen is with foldables, right?
Yeah.
So they're kind of totally trying new things, totally bringing new design. Otherwise, design elements remain the same. So, I mean, how much can you change, and why you have to change if something is
Yeah.
working functionally? Then just for
Yeah.
the sake of changing, I don't know why you should change. Maybe that's what these guys are doing. The OEMs, okay, everybody expecting us to change, so why not we make a rounded corner squares? I mean, in some years, and then go
Yeah.
turn those square corners into rounded corners again, right? I mean, otherwise, I
Right.
think things haven't changed much. I
Yeah. I
mean,
mean, they
foldables
have
is
a
one, yeah, disruptive,
yeah.
totally different change. We can talk about that later. But I'm really, I really like the foldable concept in such.
Yeah, I know you're a big fan. I'm still on the fence about that, and I know that the folks at Samsung are going to go, Leonard, what are you saying? Well, if you want to change my mind, you might want to send me a demo and I'll check it out. Okay. So yeah, let's move on to the other big announcement, which was the Galaxy Book 3. What did you think about that?
So
That that came out.
yeah, and I have actually a Galaxy book, and pretty happy with it. So, um, the Ultra looks interesting, but very expensive as well, and a little bit heavy than the other two devices. So it's kind of it's, in my view, this started maybe a couple of years ago, where they realized that it used to be like a consumer laptop, an enterprise laptop, and a gaming laptop, right? Those are kind of
Yeah.
different tiers and segments. Now, everybody does obviously consumer kind of stuff. A lot of times, you take your home or laptop to home and in the in the office. So, and then obviously everybody does a little bit of gaming. So there's a lot of commonality that's happening. So um and I think I really loved the ultra. It's a little bit heavy. It's gorgeous looking
Yeah.
screen is excellent, and with with Nvidia graphics, it can be a
Yeah.
great gaming laptop as well. So I think it's an interesting collection, a series of laptops.
Yeah, and the one thing that I thought was really cool was they went with a taller screen, and you and I had that debate, right?
Mhm.
You like the 16 by 9.
Yeah, yeah.
I like it a bit taller, and they went with the taller. I thought that was a smart move.
Correct.
Um,
Yeah,
eh,
it's not fully a 4 by 3, but it's a little bit
yeah,
different than 10 by 19, 16 by 9, right? So
yeah, right,
16 by
right.
10, I think now. Yeah,
16 by 10. You're
yeah,
very right. Yeah, and then the big trackpad, which is
correct.
you have a lot of folks who complain about trackpads. I think a lot of it is because many of them are kind of small and they're not really done all that well.
Yeah,
But I really like the feel and the size of that huge trackpad. And if
mm,
you're one of those folks who does like using trackpad, you know, it's golden. So
yeah, yeah. I
made a
like
lot
it
of
as
really good
well.
decisions. You
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. And it's instead of 15.6, it is 16-inch. So that
Yep.
increases the weight a little bit, but I think
Yeah.
that's better
And
because
yeah.
a lot of time people are not using external monitors. So if you have 16-inch laptop screen, then probably you don't need a external monitor, right?
Right. And
Yeah.
then the 360 actually very light and thin. I was
Extremely, yeah.
surprised. right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
really, really nice build quality.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, they're obviously putting together some highly competitive um, uh, laptops, right?
Correct.
And
And coming back, I really loved the multi-control thing where
yeah,
from that Galaxy book, you can control
yeah,
your tab, phone and so on. So I know I'll definitely use that feature quite a lot.
yeah. I mean, and like I said, the command center, they have all that stuff managed under
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
you know, control panel, which
Correct. Yeah.
is kind of cool.
One
Yeah.
dashboard. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think so they kind of hinted at XR in the closing, right?
That's, I
What were
mean,
your thoughts
they're
on
two,
that?
yeah, they're two weird things that, whether it called weird or things that I didn't expect at the event. The first one was nothing on the Satcom side. That is really surprising. Usually,
Really?
Samsung is, at the bleeding edge of bringing new features
Yeah.
much before Apple. So they did not have any mention of it. It's even interesting that Qualcomm, maybe a couple of weeks ago, announced they have a satellite solution with Iridium. If they had worked together, I would expect S23 to have, because it needs
Right.
extra hardware. Hardware is
Yeah.
already supported in 23, and with a simple firmware upgrade, they could enable that feature. I mean, they're not said it is not, but I read Tim Rose interview to CNET and a lot of commentary about after that. So it seems they don't have the hardware in S23. I think if that is the case,
Right.
then that could be a bummer that 6 months down the line, phones coming out with same Snapdragon Gen 2 might have that feature, and then this looks old. So I think that is one
Yeah.
concern. And second one is
That's
XR.
interesting.
So I don't know what that. I mean, they want to show a force for fledging. This notion that metaverse XR is not really going to happen in the near term, and they want to show some support across the board, or it's something that is indicative that is coming a little bit later. I don't know. I
Yeah.
really, that kind of was
Yeah.
very strange.
I'm just glad that they didn't call it metaverse.
Yeah, I don't think
So
metaverse
yeah,
is a
yeah.
is abused term now, so nobody
Congratulations.
won't
Yeah.
use it. Yeah.
Congratulations to the Samsung marketing team for resisting
Yeah.
that. But, probably something AR, XR coming down the pike because,
Yeah. Correct.
that's what Google is really talking about quite a bit.
Correct. Yeah.
But yeah, regarding the satellite thing, it might actually be a pretty smart move. And I'll tell you why. The thing is that I think people are assuming that somehow all of a sudden satellite is this big, huge next opportunity. But there hasn't been anything that's happened, quite honestly, that has changed the economics of the satellite business. Right? It's still a really tough business, and I think the jury's still out. Is like for everyone else, is this even a profitable thing? For Apple, they're big enough where they can absorb. I mean, if it's a niche feature, they can bite the financial bullet and still put this thing out, and then do what they do with it, right? But
Yeah.
for Samsung, the way they might have thought about it is that, look, this is so niche. We want to focus on what's important for us right now, and I think it was that whole cinema thing, the capture to create. That stuff is I think what they were focused on, and so I mean, to their credit, I will go against what I guess everyone else is concerned about. I will say that they made a good call in not, following that hype cycle. They're focusing on what they need to focus on, and that's probably going to work out better for them. So,
Yeah,
anyways,
my view is basically, I mean, if you are in the market buying a premium smartphone,
yeah,
right? whether you use it or not. When one device has that, the
Yeah.
other not, then it becomes okay. I mean, why am I compromising? I may not use it, maybe and that's the whole nature of it, right? It is
Yeah.
only when you're in emergency scenarios. But if I'm paying top dollar, and then why should I choose something that starting with has some a shortcoming? Whether I use it or not is a different question. So it becomes more of a market opportunity and
Yeah.
competitive offering rather than whether you use it or not. So that is one.
Yeah.
But I on the other side, I agree, and that's on the phone support side. But which I think I differ a little bit with you. But I agree with you on nothing has changed on the satellite
Really nothing. Yeah.
economic side that will make it a major opportunity. No, I don't think it is a major opportunity. If at all, it is a very minor opportunity. It might be a little bit of a positive opportunity for satellite companies, which they did not have any of
Yeah.
this thing. They have been talking about this now. There is focus on it, and so far, if I can quickly go back and talk about this. This has been around since 2G and Iridium days. I remember talking Iridium
Yeah.
coming to us when I was at the AT&T talking about it. The only difference now is earlier they were building a satellite network for smartphones, which is
Right.
impossible to do it in an economic way or make
Yeah.
money out of it. Right now, they have these networks out there, so that is really a big difference. If somebody is launching a network just for smartphones, still very hard economics. But some of these companies already have the satellites out there in the orbit,
That's
and this gives them a added new revenue stream for them to pay for whatever they already paid for these satellites, right? So it makes
right.
sense from that point of view, not
Yeah.
launching a new constellation of satellite just to support smartphones.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But it still boils down to how much value does the end market get, and how can that drive monetization for whoever is actually offering the service, right? Not just the infrastructure.
Correct. I mean,
So yeah,
people
that's the challenge.
Yeah, people could be selective as well, right? For example, Apple is doing the whole thing that they're setting back end stations to connect to emergency services and so
Yeah,
on, right? So the least companies could do without spending a lot of money is enable, satellite texting, right?
yeah,
It could be for SOS kind of reasons.
yeah.
It is free, and then charge them for anything non-event services, and then there are system in place for them to implement it, and there could be some money to be made. No, I'm not saying it's huge amount of money or it's a huge revenue opportunity, but it's kind of giving the safety and the security cover for customers, and also make some money out of it if there is if there is a way for them, but not a huge revenue opportunity in any way.
No, that's great. So you have the pros and then you have the cons.
Yeah,
You get both sides of the story. This is cool.
indeed. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's all the time we have here. We actually ran a little bit longer than we had anticipated. A lot of good stuff, and thanks everyone for joining our recap of Samsung's Galaxy Unpacked 2023. And Prakash, it was fantastic having you on to share your insights. Thank you so much for that. And remember to follow Next Curve at www.next-curve.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. And also make sure to check out Tantra Analyst at www.tantraanalyst.com and subscribe and check out Prakash's podcast, Tantra Mantra. And we will see you next time.